Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Ask Dr. John, a father daughter conversation series about American Change Agent, a life and legacy of seeking diversity, equality, and inclusion by my father, Dr. John F. Leeke, and yours truly, Ananda Leeke. Today, we're talking about an amazing and pioneering woman, Elsie Y. Cross, and her pioneering and amazing diversity training firm, EYCA, Elsie Y. Cross and Associates. My dad was a part of that, and we're reflecting and celebrating the legacy of Elsie Y. Cross and EYCA Associates today. How are you, John?
Oh, I am fine today. Had a very restful morning and uh, ready to go.
All right. So we're just going to jump right in. Dr. John, tell us, who was Elsie Y. Cross to you?
Oh, wow. Elsie was phenomenal person. She um, she had such strong commitment to the things, issues around race and gender and sexual orientation. And she actually was a real trailblazer in that area of diversity, which we were doing in the mid 70s through the 2000s. So I often think about her as uh, the Madam C.J. Walker of the diversity industry. So yes, I owe a great deal to Elsie. She was definitely a colleague, a friend, advisor, um, a supporter. So yeah.
When did you meet Elsie?
Actually, I met Elsie in 1970 was the very first time, shortly after I began working at the NEA. It just so happened that uh, the NEA, through the uh, Human Rights Center for Human Relations, was sponsoring a conference that brought together a number of communities on the East Coast. And Elsie was a member of the team from Philadelphia because she was a teacher in Philadelphia. And she was very active in the social issues of the times.
All right. So you all met in 1970, and then little by little, she began to play a major role in your early career. Talk about that role in the early part of your career and what you were doing.
Yeah. When I, along with my NEA colleagues, entered our doctoral program with the Union Institute, and Elsie was aware of it, and we had involved Elsie and actually asked Elsie um, to be a bit of an advisor to us. And as she interacted with us, she finally said to us that we were doing very good work and that work needed to expand. And Elsie had already started her own firm, Elsie Y. Cross Associates. And she told us, she said, y'all have been working so hard to fulfill your goals of trying to do some projects with the entire group, which at that time was called Circes. And she said, look, y'all need to get done and get your doctorates. And so we can get about a whole lot more work in a larger arena. And she actually suggested, urged us to go ahead and individually complete our doctoral work. That was a major intervention, and we did do that. And that led to eventually uh, myself, Delight, and Kate becoming senior members of Elsie Cross Associates.
Okay, so we want to give the complete names for the shout outs to people. So Delight,
It's Delight Frost
okay.
and Kate Kirkham, and we all have our PhDs.
Okay, and what did you get your doctorate in?
I got mine in organizational development, organizational behavior.
Okay. And you started that program in what year? And
We actually made our initial application in 1971.
mhm.
I finally completed my program in 1977.
Okay, 6-year journey. And
Yes.
LCY Cross was a part of that journey. And when you completed the PhD and you now had this new area of expertise underneath your belt, you had more connections, and your work at the NEA was shifting. Tell us about what you were doing at the NEA at that time and what you started to do with LCY Cross and Associates in the early days.
Yeah. Throughout my career at the NEA, I had always been involved in projects that were targeted toward one, increasing the number of women, minorities, people of color in all of the activities of the NEA. And so that fit right in. Plus, uh, I was doing several projects that dealt specifically with racism and sexism. So that was the direction that LCY Cross was about. And so, with a, a lot of the work that I was doing at the NEA, and my work in my doctoral program uh, provided the support to LCY Cross Associates.
So now I want to talk about EYCA, LCY Cross Associates, and tell us what the structure of it was. What made this diversity training firm so unique? And I know that that's a loaded question because there's so many aspects of it, not just the architecture, like the infrastructure of it, but the people power behind it, the values, the philosophies, the way in which you all designed process um, oriented work with your clients, how you approach clients, what the mission of each training, each client engagement was. There's a lot. So you start where you feel most comfortable in shaping our understanding of EYCA, LCY Cross Associates.
Mhm, mhm. I think that's a lot that you've asked
Yeah.
in that. Uh, Let me just say that um, for probably almost 40 years, EYCA and my involvement went on. Now, EYCA was an organizational development consulting firm that specialized in helping Fortune 100 companies to manage diversity. Now, people probably would know that uh, the term managing diversity, uh, in many ways, was a creation of Elsie Cross Associates. And we were about the whole notion of diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's a term that is now being used a great deal. Now we're talking about present time. It is the thing that the current president, Donald J. Trump, is attempting to get rid of. But the foundation that Elsie Cross established is so solid that it will continue to go on.
I want to stop you just for a second because
Mhm.
there's a whole chapter in the book, American Change Agent, that discusses LCY Cross. And can you point people to it? Because I think you're sharing some excerpts from the
Yes, I
book.
am. It's actually the let's see, that chapter is chapter 17, and
And what's
it
it called?
it's called the DEI Innovator LCY Cross and the EYCA story. So uh, that a particular chapter spends some time introducing and talking about Elsie. And then it also then talks about EYCA as a organization. And that's the part where you were saying, what was EYCA? And the fact that it was highly structured. And when it first started, there were five of us. There was Elsie, the president, and then the four senior uh, consultants. And that included uh, Joe Potts, a white man, Kate Kirkham, a white woman, and Delight Frost, a white woman, and yours truly, me, the black man. It was the five of us for the first couple of years that did all of the things that were being involved in working with the different clients. And as I say, we were working primarily with some of the very top Fortune 100 companies. Uh, we were doing work with several industries, certainly the petroleum industry, the banking or financial industry, um, the let's see what there were several others as well as some prominent college universities. One of the things as we did this work, uh, we utilize not only our knowledge and skills in diversity, but in organizational development. That made us quite unique in that we were able to help the different companies that we were involved in to manage sometimes some of their mergers, their expansions, because of our knowledge and skill in organizational development. I think the one of the major contributions that we made to the diversity industry was the establishment of the EYCA network. As as we grew, because more companies were realizing the need for our kind of expertise, and we began having more and more contracts. And let me just say that when we contracted with an organization, we contracted for a long-term engagement. And in fact, a number of our clients, we we worked with them close to 10 years, so that it gave an opportunity for us to start working with the top of the organization. And we always said when we began to have discussions about entering into a contract that we were in this for the long term. And we began conducting workshops for the top part of the organization, the president, and his cabinet. And I purposely is saying his cabinet because initially there were no women heads of any of the major companies that we were working with. As we continued working with the company, we would move through the organization, and on most of the organizations we worked with, we got all the way through to some of the lowest level of employees in the firm in helping them to become more aware of diversity and developing skills to manage effectively the increasing diversity of those companies. And as I said, in order for us to service these companies, we had and did increase the consultants, and we brought them on board. But to become an EYCA network member, you had to have a great understanding of history and social political realities of oppression and discrimination. You needed to study the principles and practices of organizational development and change. And you had to be committed to academic and experiential learning about how adults learn. And finally, you needed to be working to understand your own attitudes and behaviors toward people who are different by race, gender, sexual orientation, and physical ability. That's what we mean when we talk about diversity. So over the years, our network grew to over 50 individuals, and the network was always very diverse: Black, white, Hispanic, Asian. We had individuals who were gay, bisexual, uh,
Lesbian,
lesbian. I'm sorry. It's so much that I'm trying to cover.
LGBTQ,
Yes,
LGBTQ at that time. Now it's LGBTQIA, but at the time that you all were working, it was LGBTQ.
yeah. So, and so that was what we were about. We did additional training of our network members, and we had a process by which, when we invited someone to come in as a prospective network member, uh, we would naturally, of course, interview them, and then we would make sure that they met the other requirements of, and just about every new network member generally had their doctorate. So we were highly qualified.
Mhm.
Now, we set up a system in which that we had what's called project managers. And project managers were individuals whom Elsie essentially would select to manage a client. And then there were individuals who we call deans, and they were the workshop leader. And all of our workshops generally had a 4-person staff, and that staff was also diverse by race and gender. specifically. In addition, then we had the next level were trainers, and they were the individuals who were some of the newest members. And then when we began bringing in folks, they would come in a co-training role. So we had a highly developmental system for building the strong, competent network of individuals who were servicing the clients. So that's a bit of the structure and what it was about, and why we became very successful.
One thing I want to highlight is the fact that relationships very, very important in your life as well as in the life of the EYCA network and business while it was in legal existence and even now after many years of it dissolving and people going on their own. The relationships are still there for many people. And so you met a number of people along the way, and there's so many people. So forgive us if we don't give a shout out. You all know who you all are in my dad's life, in our family's life, because many of the people that were part of EYCA became very close to the Leeke family, and we became very close to their family. But people like Carol Brantley, people like Brenda Dancel Jones, people like Shirley Fletcher, people like Barbara Riley, Tony Dutton Butler, uh,
Daisy
Daisy
Rios,
Rios, Jack
Kip
Gant,
Henderson, Jack
yeah,
Gann,
Gant,
yeah, Michael Burkhart. Uh, These are
yeah,
these are
Linda
individuals.
Dutterman, is it
Yeah,
Linda? Yeah.
Linda Stoltzman.
Hmm.
These are individuals, as you said, that um, made up my EYCA family.
Hmm.
And you're right. I have always felt and believed and operated based on building strong relationships. And I've always said that one of the major relationships is family. My
Hmm.
own family. I had a family at the NEA. I had a EYCA family.
Yeah, you have a family at St. Joseph's Catholic Church.
Yes.
You have a family in your neighborhood. In
Yep.
all the neighborhoods that you lived in, you've had relationships with people. But I want to bring it back to EYCA and as the child and the unofficial daughter, goddaughter, niece of many people in EYCA. What I see and what I have witnessed and experienced and benefited from is there is a thirst for learning that everybody uh, brought to the table, and not just out of for professional development, but also personal development. And you all engaged in national training lab trainings. People did their own workshops. People went on retreats. But the thing that, and it's not but, and what I got and what I realize now, even at 60 and how I live my life, is that people invested in their spiritual, their personal, their physical, their financial, and their professional education and development. The full person and
Yes.
did it in different ways and practiced principles of Kwanzaa in economic empowerment and where they shopped, who they shop with. I mean, many of the sisters that we mentioned, Brenda Dancel Jones and Tony Dutton Butler and Carol Brantley, when you were looking for gifts, they helped advise you because you all were out traveling. They helped advise you on what to get mommy, at times. And you turned them on to places as well. I mean, we all ended up shopping in some of the same places and didn't know. I didn't know that they were shopping there. I'd run into them and be like, "Oh, y'all are on U Street shopping at Trade Secrets and Zawadi and you know, Belmont, 18th Street, Belmont. Um, yeah,
Let me just say that one of the most enjoyable things that I experienced with a number of the individuals that we both have been mentioning was that because Brenda and Tony and Shirley, uh, we all lived in the DC area. And so quite often when we would have a workshop, and many of the workshops were in the Pennsylvania, New Jersey area. And so I would be the one who, because I drove most of the time when I went to any of the client systems. And so we would drive together up to the workshops and then return. And those were some of the most pleasurable times that I had as uh, Shirley and I would be riding back, or Tony and I, or Brenda and I. Um, and we would talk about everything. We shared about our families, what was going on. And one of the things that was extremely helpful for me is that I think by my conversations, particularly with those three women, certainly helped me as a husband uh, with my relationship with Teresa. Um, and I don't know that I probably ever shared that with the three of them, but it meant so much to me.
yeah. So back to Elsie. Elsie was the Madam C.J. Walker in our eyes of diversity training and the diversity field. I know Elsie as an author. In 1996, Elsie published with a publisher, The Diversity Factor. And my dad is getting up to go to his library in his office. So you see the chair turning around. He's going to pick up that book. But she purchased this book called The Diversity Factor, capturing, well, she published this book called The Diversity Factor, capturing the competitive advantage of a changing workforce. And she also uh, published another book, which was The Diversity Factor. Was no, was that was managing, where there was one called Managing Diversity, the Courage to Lead, and then The Diversity Factor, capturing the competitive advantage of a changing workforce. The Diversity Factor book was published in 1996, and the Managing Diversity, the Courage to Lead, was published in 2000. Tell us about the Diversity Factor and Managing Diversity, your experience of her publishing these books, because this was a big deal.
Yes, it was. And that's why uh, I certainly state and feel very strongly that Elsie was the pioneer. She defined diversity. And through particularly these two publications, as well as they a quarterly magazine that we publish for a period of time, that's something that for anyone in the doing diversity work today, that should be a must reading for you, because the things that we initiated and followed through on uh, set the stage. Because, in fact, one of the other things that Elsie quite often would say is that we were there to work ourselves out of business. And sure enough, as we began to enter into probably 2010, many companies began to hire individuals as full-time diversity managers or trainers, and they were now doing the work that we had initially started in the 80s and the 90s. Uh,
And
so
I just want to interject because I just realized that Margaret Blackburn White was the
yes.
co-author of The Diversity Factor, Capturing the Competitive Advantage of a Changing Workforce. And for all those that are interested, you can find the book on all of the online platforms. It was published by McGraw-Hill Education in 1996. So that means the book in 2026, we're in 2025 now, the book is coming up on 30 years of existence. And the
Yes.
other book, Managing Diversity, was published 25 years ago in
Hmm.
2000.
Hmm.
So just to keep everybody current. Now, I will tell you that it looks like I'm just looking online now that you could get a hard copy of the diversity factor um, at a reasonable rate. Now, the managing diversity, s- uh, s- shop around because it's an investment. That's all I'm going to say. It's an investment. The book that was published in 2000 by Prager, Praeger. Um, so yeah, I'll turn it back over to you. I just wanted to give people some information so that they would know where they could find it in the publishers.
I think I want, before we kind of run out of time for this segment, I want to also mention a little bit about my role
Mm,
in EYCA. As I said, I was one of the senior uh, consultants when the firm was in its initial stages. And I wore every one of the hats that I spoke about earlier. I was a project manager for several of our clients. That meant that I would work with the president or the CEO and his cabinet in getting everything started, and then managing that relationship throughout the period of time. And sometimes, as a project manager, that meant 3, 4, 5 years.
mhm,
In addition to being a project manager, uh, I was also the dean. That was the workshop leader for numerous workshops. I don't think that I can count actually the number of 4 day and sometimes 5 day workshops where I was responsible for a 4 person staff.
mhm,
Um, and and then in addition, um, rather than being the dean, I would be a trainer, uh, working with one of the other top level EYCA consultants. Um, so that and what we had in that 4 person team, generally there were 2 men and 2 women,
mhm,
and that meant there were always uh, 2 white and 2 people of color. And in some instances, because that we had the sexual orientation, there might be, out of those 4, might be a gay man or a lesbian or a bisexual a person. And because we knew we needed to represent those kinds of roles and identities. In addition to being a project manager, dean, trainer, I played a role on a number of our committees, the committees that help to um, build the strong EYCA organization. So I worked a lot with Carol, with Delight, with Daisy, with Barbara, because we began to be a very strong management group over the years.
Mhm. Yeah. So I want to close with just wrapping it up with when Elsie passed, when she made her transition, her son, Barry Cross, took over and led for a number of years until the firm made the decision to close its doors. And when we think about Elsie, I think in the beginning of the chapter on her life and the EYCA firm, we have a quote from Elsie, right?
Uh,
At the
let's
beginning.
see. Uh, Trying to think. Oh, yes. Let me read that.
Yeah, I wanted to read it so people could hear.
Yeah. Did you want to read it or you want me to
No,
read it?
I'm gonna have you read it.
Oh,
You're the person that's connected, most connected to Elsie and you're the person that was the most impacted by it.
yeah. Well, she states most people in this society are not willing to look at the systemic issues. We almost always put the burden on the victim rather than on the perpetuation of a system that helped create the victim. But if you can get to the systemic level, you get to the source. Our work is based on the fundamental belief that racism and sexism are deeply rooted in our culture. We have never resolved these problems because people are not given an opportunity to talk about these issues in a safe environment. And that particular statement did appear in addition to in her book, but also in an article that appeared in the Los Angeles Times Magazine. And the article's title was Elsie Cross versus the Suits, Suits. And the article was written by J.P. White in August 9th of 1992.
Wow.
Uh,
That's still true. It's
Still
August,
very true.
it's
Very,
August 23rd, 2025 today, and we are still wrestling with that in a major way in the United States. And I would say in all of the countries that are like the United States. That's all I'm gonna say. That have similar systems. We're still wrestling with that. So, one of the things that we have tried to do with American Change Agent is that at the end of every chapter, we have discussion questions and reflection for you individually, as well as with your family, your friends, your colleagues, your book club members, your community members, your neighbors, your sorority fraternity brothers, your sorority sisters and fraternity brothers, anyone that you are in community with, in relationship with. And we would hope and we encourage you to use those communities, those places where you feel most safe, to explore the prompts that we have provided, as well as just the topics that come up as a result of you reading American Change Agent. Dr. John, is there anything that you want to say to folks to encourage them to explore these issues on their own as well as in a group?
Yeah, I'll second everything you just said, and I think in these times, and as we are talking today, um, we need to, in one sense, rededicate ourselves to engaging in the struggle to maintain our democracy. And that democracy is a democracy that talks about freedom and the ability to be everything that you can possibly be. And without us engaging in the work of increasing our diversity through recognizing people for who they are.
All right. Well, everybody, we want to encourage you to go on over to anandaleek.com/Dr. John to learn more about American Change Agent, a life and legacy of seeking diversity, equality, and inclusion. When you show up on the page, make sure that you sign up for our email list so that we can keep in touch with you and we can share information about our fall and winter and 2026 and beyond conversations and events and book readings. We also want to put a plug in that when you do buy the book from IngramSparks, because when you purchase from IngramSparks, we as independent self-publishers, we get more money each time you purchase as opposed to going to Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and any other online publishers. So we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye now and enjoy your reading.